To my subscribers, thank you for tuning in once again. If you are new, welcome. We are visiting the National Pearl Harbor Memorial located in Honolulu, Hawaii. Pearl Harbor is a U.S. military base, better yet, a strategic military base for the U.S. Navy. This is also one of the reasons why Hawaii became one of the 50 states. The first reason why the United States wanted Hawaii was because sugar and pineapples grew in Hawaii. But the US had to pay for the exports. That's why they wanted Hawaii under their control. This began the overthrow of the Hawaiian kingdom against their current queen, Queen Liliuokalani. She tried to use peaceful methods to not have the US annex Hawaii, but she was placed on house arrest. After she was released, she headed over to Washington, D.C. with Hawaiian nationalists and over 20,000 signatures. They successfully convinced Congress to pause the annexation treaty on Hawaii. After 266 sailors died in the explosion of the USS Maine off the coast of Havana, Cuba, the Spanish-American War between the United States and Spain began. During the war, Hawaii was seen as a strategic military base. On July 7, 1898, President William McKinley declared Hawaii a U.S. territory. Hawaii became the 50th and last state in the United States on August 21, 1959. The reason why Hawaii is a strategic military base for the U.S. Navy in the Pacific is because Hawaii is smack in the middle of the Earth's largest body of water. Back then, ships and planes used Hawaii as a place to refuel before continuing to Eastern Asia or the Americas. The three things that are big in Hawaii are tourism, agriculture, and military. The Honolulu skyline serves the western part of the city. By late 2025, the train will take passengers straight to the Pearl Harbor Museum, but it will not take tourists to the museum from the metropolitan area until 2031. As you can see, it's raining. Pearl Harbor was recognized as a National Historic Landmark on January 29, 1964. The key views here are the USS Bofin, the USS Arizona Memorial, and the USS Missouri. First, we are going to visit the USS Bofin. The USS Bofin is a Balo-class submarine of the United States Navy named for the bowfin fish. Construction on the vessel started on July 23, 1942, and was launched on December 7, 1942, a year after the attack on Pearl Harbor. The interiors have been open to visitors since 1981. This will be cool to see because I've never been in a submarine before. The first thing we see is some shelves that store torpedoes. Above them are beds for the crew members. The torpedoes would get pushed into one of these four tubes. Once sealed, they are then fired. As you can see, they put them close to the tubes because they are heavy. There was not much room aboard. Here we have what looks like a kitchen. This is a room for crew members to sleep. There is also a toilet nearby. Next is a room that is used for communications. The next room looks more like a kitchen. Here are tables where the crew members can play games while on break or eat their meals. Closer look at the kitchen. It was very tight quarters. Imagine you had to learn to sleep with noise. If the submarine's in battle, the crew members will get wakened up if they are sleeping. Battles can happen at any moment. By the beds is a closet. This is one of the toilet rooms. Imagine that. Here is a room with showers. Submarines behave like hybrids. When the vessel is on sea level like boats, then it would use the diesel engine. When underwater, it would use the electric engine to drive the propellers. Another engine room. There are torpedo tubes at the other end of the submarine. The bow fin can shoot in both the front and the back. We basically went from front to back. By the time we got out, the rain stopped. Here is the top, normally used for scouting. There is also a big gun here used in the event the submarine is in battle. We did find a rainbow. Civilian ships can also be anchored at Pearl Harbor. The Pearl Harbor Memorial also includes a few exhibits that talk about the attack on Pearl Harbor in World War II. The attack on the U.S. on December 7, 1941 was a surprise attack. Let's go over why it happened. On September 27, 1940, Germany, Italy, and Japan became the Axis powers of World War II under the Tripartite Pact. Adolf Hitler's Blitzkrieg led Germany to successfully invade half of Europe. Franklin Delano Roosevelt used peaceful means for dealing with Japan by cutting off trade with them and the United States. If you look at Japan's geography, Japan is clearly like a small island, so they couldn't get enough resources to take over the Pacific. So they began to imperialize Eastern Asia for their resources. They even dropped out of the League of Nations because of it. But this topped the line after the Nanjing Massacre. The Nanjing Massacre was the mass murder of Chinese civilians in Nanking, China. The craziest part about this war crime was two soldiers had a contest of who can kill 100 people with a single sword. First, 200,000 Chinese civilians died in the massacre. Between 20 and 80,000 women and girls were also raped during the massacre. You may hear the term imperialism. That means a stronger country takes over a weaker country. The cartoon picture that you see on the screen is a picture of the sun will never set on the British Empire. Why? It's because the octopus that represents England has a hand on each country Great Britain took over. These countries were spread all across the globe. During World War II, Japan called themselves Imperialist Japan. Even their flag at the time depicted just that. Today, Japan's flag is white with a red dot. The United States responded to Japan's expansion by sending its Pacific Naval Fleet from San Diego to Honolulu. However, for Japan, geography was not on their side. The United States annexed the Philippines after the Spanish-American War. The route that ships took to get to the Japanese mainland from the South Pacific Islands passed right next to the Philippines. Through the South China Sea, the United States immediately put a stop to that by cutting off the supply line. Japan knew that if they wanted to take over the Philippines, the Pacific Naval Fleet in Hawaii would have to be wiped out first. At dawn on December 7, 1941, 353 aircraft were launched from the Japanese carriers Hiryu, Soryu, Akaki, and Kaga. All of them were sent to Honolulu to attack Pearl Harbor. For locals living in Honolulu, it was a peaceful morning before they came. A radar station outside of the city saw a big squadron heading towards Honolulu. They mistakenly thought it was a group of U.S. aircraft that were sent to the base from one of the aircraft carriers that was outside of Hawaii. But it was the Japanese squadron. At 9:48 a.m., the Japanese squadron launched their surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. Most of the servicemen couldn't get to their posts in time. The rampage only lasted 75 minutes. By the end, the Japanese destroyed nearly 20 U.S. naval vessels. This included the USS Arizona and 7 other battleships. 340 U.S. fighters were also wrecked. The death toll skyrocketed to over 2,400 Americans. Many more Americans were injured. Half of the people that were killed in Pearl Harbor were on board the USS Arizona. To get to the memorial, you have to get a timed ticket. You can get them online or you just go to the desk and ask for one. They will give it to you free of charge. After a brief introduction at the Pearl Harbor Memorial Theater, we boarded a boat that took us to the memorial. The ride will be very short. The USS Arizona's final resting place is in its position in the battleship row that was one of the major targets during the attack. The USS Maryland, Oklahoma, Tennessee, West Virginia, Vestal, and Nevada were hit. The Arizona and the Oklahoma were both hit and sunk. The other guys were repaired and sent to fight in World War II. For the Arizona, the parts that were above the water were taken and scrapped. Everything else was left to where it is today. One of the bombs that hit the USS Arizona may have reached the place where the ship's explosives were stored. That is what caused a major explosion that killed most of the ship's crew. For the ship's crew members that died, they are still buried in the ship. In 1962, the memorial we are going into opened. That is the USS Missouri. And here's the memorial. Millions of people come here to see and learn about Pearl Harbor every year. The roof in the middle is lower than the two ends because it represents the defeat and then the victory at the end of the war. There are 7 windows that symbolize the day of the attack. We are in the entry room, closest to the dock. This is where people can gather for ceremonies. Keep in mind that this is sacred ground. The assembly room is the longest of the 3 and is where you can walk around and learn about the USS Arizona. You can also look down to see the vessel. This stuff is the oil from the ship still leaking after the attack. It is said that this means the ship is still grieving from that terrible day. The room at the very end is the shrine. This room has a marble wall that lists all of the individuals that were killed on the ship. The list is very long. When you enter this museum, the hairs on you just stand up. The holes near the names are known to be the tree of life. It lets light in and is a symbol of peace. For the individuals that were on board the Arizona that survived, they prefer to have their ashes buried here with their buddies. The most recent burial here occurred recently in 2021. The attack on Pearl Harbor was the most devastating attack on US soil until September 11, 2001. Some parts of the ship can still be seen from here. There are 2 white balls that indicate both ends of the ship. The day following the attack, the United States declared war on Japan. On December 11, 1941, Germany and Italy declared war on the US. The United States joined forces with Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. Another effect of Pearl Harbor was Executive Order 9066. This was an order by FDR that forced Japanese Americans out of their homes and into concentration camps because they were thought of as spies. They were not freed until after the war ended. If you want to learn more about World War II, I recommend visiting the National World War II Museum in New Orleans, Louisiana. The next thing we are going to visit is the USS Missouri, famous for being the ship that Japan surrendered on board, ending World War II. To get there, you have to take a bus. Keep in mind that when crossing the bridge to get to the ship, you are in a no-drone zone, just like the one at the Kennedy Space Center. You cannot fly a drone around Pearl Harbor because it's a military base. Here we are at the USS Missouri. As you can see, the ship is massive. Like the USS Bofin, you could see the interiors of the Missouri. There is a couple that was standing here since the war's end in 1945.
Come on, wait, that's enough. Hey, you listening to me? I don't know what's going on, but he's not responding.
That is the USS Arizona Memorial. The USS Missouri is an Iowa-class battleship built for the United States Navy in the 1940s. It is currently a museum ship. Completed in 1944, she is the last battleship commissioned by the United States. Today, the US Navy doesn't have battleships in the fleet. All of them are gone. They say a destroyer can do the damage of a battleship. The US Navy today consists of destroyers, aircraft carriers, submarines, and fighter jets. The fighter jets today are more dangerous than the planes used in World War II. Another thing that you didn't think about was they have things in the water that point out where the battleships and Battleship Row stood when they were hit. This is the spot the Japanese surrendered on September 2nd, 1945. Japan officially surrendered, ending World War II. It occurred on the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. This is where World War II ended. These are pictures about the historic day. Here is an officer's quarters. It looks pretty cool. We are now at the stern of the ship. A plane actually crashed in the spot where you see the dent. The drink machine in the back of this cafeteria makes the cafeteria look like it's still running. This is a dark room with some pictures. Because these ships would be away from home for long periods of time, there was lots of foods and snacks. The next room looks like a library. This is a sleeping room. Another museum on the ship. The officers' lounge. The mess halls on the Missouri are different. Here is a larger kitchen. I believe this is a pantry. Maybe a kitchen if I'm mistaken. This room looks like a different kitchen. This was how ships communicate with each other and with the land back then. Computers are a lot better today, thanks to the space race. This is a room that stores guns and firearms. All the kitchens look different. This one looks like a bakery that cooks bread. The one down the hallway appears to cook donuts. I believe this is a machine shop. There are more beds. The doors on the ship are watertight doors. Here is a classroom where they were taught the plans and which role everybody plays in a battle. Looks like a dental office. Shells are stored way deep down. They have to travel through tubes like this one to get to the big guns. The last thing we saw is a meeting center with a map. The shape of the continents on this map are incorrect. Now we are at the top of the ship overlooking the Missouri and its surroundings. The top parts of the Missouri also have anti-aircraft guns. The next room is where they control the ship, called the bridge. That is the end of the museum. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, subscribe, comment, and follow my Instagram account for more. This is JT on the Go signing off.